My man, how are you, buddy?
Wonderful. Thank you for having me on again.
Let me get your levels here before you blow my microphone off.
I'm so used to talking directly into mine.
Yeah, that's good. I love that. No, you can do it. You
Okay, right here?
Yeah, whatever you're comfortable.
be right
That's
here.
good for me, 100%. As a matter of fact, I'd always like to have my guest up on them, but, some guests are... So it's like, it's always... And I was real militant about it at the beginning, Chris, but now I'm kind of like, yeah, whatever anybody wants.
Yeah.
I'll make the adjustments.
I was going to say, it's something you have to just do. You can spell it out for everybody, And I appreciate everyone who's been on. Let me say that first. But, there's certain times you're like, okay, make sure you're talking right into the microphone, and then immediately it's turn my head away or,
so
lean back.
I had this weird idea when I was so frustrated in the beginning. I thought maybe I should go get those mics that have the boom thing. In front.
Yeah.
And then everybody could just sit back and,
Yeah.
It would look strange, I guess, but they make some really good ones now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought maybe I could really dial into, maybe it would work. And then I floated that idea. A couple people oh, no, we have to have the microphone. I'm like, oh, okay.
I tried having one of those screen things in from, you always see them in the voiceover, actors stuff. There's that little screen that goes over the microphone.
Oh, yeah.
And I kept using that thinking,
Windscreen.
Yeah, exactly, for the plosives or whatever, the P's and the whatever. So I put those over and I realized if you just buy good microphones and you're not in a wind tunnel, you should probably be all right.
Yeah, odds are likely if you're in a captive studio environment, if you need those windscreens, probably
Right.
the quality of the mic's probably pretty shitty. Then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Buddy, I appreciate you doing this stuff, really.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I love being in here. This is, as I told you last time, it's very comfortable and just inviting. It's warm. And just, I'm a big music fan, so seeing the guitars everywhere, it's always fun coming up.
Thank you. Yeah, I kind of take the studio for granted now. I shouldn't, but
Yeah.
I kind of do because it's old hat. But yeah, it's a comfortable place, and to hear you and other guests tell me it's comfortable, that's kind of music to my ears because that's what I was trying to do.
I think it's something about kind of it's well lit, but it's also dim at the same time.
The back of the air.
Yeah.
We worked on that. Because, in Coriopolis, the other studio was too lit. The walls were too lit.
Right.
So once we started toning that down, it created a focal center point of the table.
Yeah, I feel like it feels a lot more intimate, too.
Nice.
You can see who's at the
That's
table,
what we were looking
and then it's
for.
just depth behind that.
Jerry Mulligan, one of my recurring guests, was the one that gave us the idea to do that. See, Jerry, we did that. We figured it out. There's a non-solicited
There you
opinion
go.
that we were
Absolutely.
successful.
Excellent job. I feel like that's one thing since I've been, doing podcasts or whatever. If I do somebody else's, it's just let me look at it. It's like a painter going to a house,
Sure.
or,
Oh, well, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure you would know. Yeah.
We're all looking at, we're all hopefully learning from each other.
Oh, yeah.
Our conversations, whether it's been on the podcast or off, ideas and things. I've pulled things from what you folks do, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right, right.
If you're not doing that, you're probably not paying attention.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like a lot of the podcasters I've had on, which I always love having podcasters on. If they ask me anything, I love talking shop with it because nobody else cares. Nobody cares
100%.
how the Rodecaster works with this microphone and then this cord that went from the iPad, but it didn't work on the one, and then other people get it, but So I enjoy it while I can.
let's get the background on Poorman's podcast.
Okay.
How did it originate? Because I think knowing a bit about your story, you were involved with some some remedial podcasting prior. Is that right?
Yeah. Remedial's putting it nicely. So I tore my ACL back in my 20s and was kind of laying around, and I'd listen to some podcasts, and then to get back in shape I'd run, and I'd do distance running, so I listen to podcasts all the time. So I kind of got into it, and I'd like to listen to talk radio and things, but I really liked the podcast because I could do it whenever I wanted. I could start it and then pick it up later. So I was really into it, and on the distance running, I could listen to a long form. So I thought that's something I would like to do. I love listening to it, so let's try it. So I had my computer that I just started at Duquesne at the time, so I had a nice computer, and then we had the USB Rock Band microphones, like the Guitar Hero. Poor Man's Podcast is kind of based on, this is the Poor Man's Podcast. We used what I had to make it work. So we had this computer. We threw it on top of an air hockey table and pulled some stools up, and then we talked about sports or whatever. And it wasn't good by any stretch, but we were doing something. So I was getting in the habit of talking, of how microphones levels work, and how just having a conversation that you don't necessarily always have, depending on the format of the podcast. This one's way more conversational, but other ones it's kind of formatted differently. So just getting in the swing of things with that. But like I said, it never really picked up. I was like 18 or 20 at the time. My brothers were, in the middle, like sophomores in high school. So we would talk about sports and whatever. And with COVID and everything was shut down there,
So you were doing it.
This was in
before?
2012.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. This was I was just looking at my Facebook page, and it said that I think it was 2012 or 2013. It was like February, and I think we put one out and then did another one like.
What was the name of it?
It was still Poorman's podcast.
Oh, no shit. I didn't know that.
Well,
okay.
If I thought it was going to pick up, I probably would have changed the name, but it was just like, you know what? We'll pick up Poorman's podcast because that's what we called it. Because like I said, we were just using whatever we had. And then I got a Rodecaster. Like I said, it's, the nice board, and it has, you can record onto it, and the different levels, there's sound drops. So I got that with, we all had some extra money with the stimulus and stuff, and I was ahead on my bills and stuff.
So wait, you started in 2012, and then did you stop for a while?
I stopped for 8 years or what.
Okay.
Because, I mean, we were doing it, but it wasn't like it was fun, but it wasn't something like I was really invested in. It was something we kind of did when we hung out.
Yeah.
And then we were like, you know what? It's cool to see our name on iTunes or Apple Music or whatever. Oh, there we go. And I thought it was a big deal without knowing if you just submitted it. It's like on there. But it was a big deal at the time. And I talked to Shay, who does the show with me now. We had just talked about podcasts, 4 years ago or something like. I can't believe I know her that long now. Probably something like that. And it just seemed when everything shut down, it was a good time to pick up. Or, I'd get back into it. I still listen to podcasts. I don't as much anymore because I'm focused on producing
time, for sure.
I just don't have enough hours in the day. I don't. I'd
so
love
much
to
content.
do more. Yes. So
that's a thing.
And with doing the podcast, I was saying right before we started, like, I love doing it all, but like maybe I should give up some of the control, but I not the control, like let other people help a little bit more, but I just can't.
In the production.
Correct. With the video, with the sound. I have people recording sound, but any of the editing, anything, I don't like anything going out without me okaying it. Because there's my name on it. I mean...
It's a curse.
Yeah. I think it's a good thing because it shows that I care, but maybe I care too much for my own detriment.
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, I'm also like, okay, what else are you going to do? You're going to go watch TV, or you're going to go do something that you don't care about, or go do this. You only have a finite time on this earth. Mm-hmm. This is way more enjoyable. It's substance. It's substance for yourself.
Certainly.
It makes me happier. It makes me better at other things. I stay on path. If I wake up and have a goal, I need to do this, this, and this, it helps me accomplish other goals during the day. So it keeps me on that path. But to get back to kind of what you were saying, like I said, I think we did 10 episodes, and it was my cousin and my brother. And then my cousin came back when I first started back up. I think we started on April 12th, because I remember it was 412. And people were like, oh, you do that for Pittsburgh? And no, it just happened. That was the first Monday we had. But I think it was April 12th of 2001 now. And he came back, and I had Shay come back on, and it was just in my living room. We were just recording. And then, I made a goal that I wanted to keep doing it every week. And I just, even if it was good, if it was bad, I need to do it every week. And I need to hold myself to that accountability. And I'd say that's really the main reason I'm doing the podcast again.
Really?
Yeah. I love doing it. Well, that's the main reason I started.
Okay.
To make sure I wanted to have more discipline in my life with every aspect. I would always be like, I'm the guy who could go do it, but I never did anything.
Okay.
And what good is that? Saying you can go do it. Maybe you can go do it. Okay, then go do it. There's a lot of people who say, oh, you should do this or that, and then don't do it themselves. And I thought, well, maybe I'm that. Maybe instead of pointing the finger at everybody, oh, this is what they do, I'm that way too. And there's kind of self-reflection and kind of acknowledging you don't know everything all the time, and you could always improve. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, I guess. So I kind of just wanted, you know what? I feel like this will put me on a good path, and I just want to be, a more efficient, a better person, a better dad, a better, friend with everybody, because it puts me in a good mental mindset, and I rarely am.
So does it force additional structure in your life?
Absolutely.
That then maybe bleeds over into other aspects?
Yeah. So I feel like the best way to kind of describe it is like inertia. An object in motion is going to stay in motion until, an outside force acts on it. If I keep going with this, then I'm waking up early. I'm eating healthier, it seems like.
Right.
It's just one thing.
You're already in motion.
Yeah. And it's easier for me to, okay, now I'll go clean the backyard or do whatever it is that I needed to do, where before the task list would never get accomplished. I'd write the list or whatever. I wouldn't even write the list because that would be on the list to write the list, but then I would never get around to it. And I would do that. It would, I would give me some structure and I'd have to do it. And then I saw other benefits in my life.
Certainly. Yeah. And I think you said you're a long distance runner, so you probably understand some levels of discipline, right? Because I walk long distances with a weight vest, but I don't run. That just seems incredibly taxing and painful. So to do that, I admire anyone that runs. That's a lot of discipline.
I feel like, at least with me, it's like I will get fixated on something, and then I want to okay, now I have to dominate this.
Immerse yourself in it.
Yeah, I was in bad shape. I was definitely overweight, and I looked gross. I wasn't happy with myself. So I started running and working out, and in a couple months, I completely transformed. But that's kind of how I am, because I was in a good mindset then. I was kept going, and then I'd fall off. I tore my ACL, I was saying, and that wasn't good for my mental state and stuff. I've always had some mental stuff. I'm bipolar. Mm-hmm. I have ADD. I have anxiety problems and stuff. And since starting the podcast and stuff, I've seen a therapist. I've been on medication and stuff. That's what I'm saying. It keeps me there. It gives me a reason to get out of bed. Mm-hmm. And then when I'm out of bed, I can do whatever I want. But I feel like I wanted to take more control. And this is something that it's a small thing, but every week I have to do it. I have to prep. I have to talk to people. I have to plan things. I have to talk to multiple people, schedule things, and I feel better.
Yeah, so you've basically set up your life in a way that you've baked in some structure.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. My entire life, I didn't have structure. I underachieved in school a ton, based on the intelligence I feel like I would have had. But I feel like my intelligence more, not to sound arrogant by saying my intelligence, but I feel like it's more suited for not necessarily memorizing things and regurgitating them on a sheet of paper. If you give me, if you want to accomplish this and these are what you have, I'm good at, making things work like that or building. But I feel like I didn't necessarily do as well in school, and maybe I lost interest in things. Not that I was a bad student, but I underachieved, and that was the main goal. I played football in high school. Did I put all my effort into it? I don't know that I did, and there's different aspects. I make excuses. I would make excuses okay, well, maybe this happened or this. But at the end of the day, I don't think that I put the effort in. And for this, I want it to be something I put the effort in, not to be afraid to put something out, to just go for it.
So let me ask you this. What do you prefer, a solo activity or being part of a team?
I'd say solo. Because, and the reason for this, I like being around people. When it's solo, it's me, it's what I say. And that used to terrify me, because what do I know? I'd always think everybody else in the class, what they have to say is important, and what I'm going to say is dumb. Who cares what I say? They won't understand. And now that I'm older, I'm just because they think differently doesn't necessarily mean anybody's right. What does anybody know? I feel like I know a lot of people, and a lot of people are dumb. A lot of people are smart, but a lot of people are dumb. Mm-hmm. And I would say, maybe I'm too focused on what everybody else was thinking and not worried about what I thought myself. And then when I took the time and really thought, am I just regurgitating what somebody else said, politically, family, whatever way, or is it my actual opinion? And I thought a lot, you know what? I don't know that I'm actually making these own decisions. And when I started breaking things down, not listening to what other people said, and just saw it for the way I saw it, I had a way more confidence, and I'm pleased with it.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds to me like you started coming to your own conclusions. You still were listening to things, but you were not just rubber stamping someone's opinion and adopting it as your own.
Yeah, I feel like I'll hear a lot of people who say things, and then if you ask them why, they don't really have anything, because it's not really what they think. It's because that's what the guy on the radio said.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's easier.
Right.
They haven't spent any time maybe isolating information and then trying to formulate their own philosophy, because personal philosophy is not a very popular concept in humanity today, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot is like you have to be honest with yourself, and sometimes it's not always a fun answer, or maybe there's improvement that could be had and it's not an easy answer. Mm-hmm. So maybe people stray away from that or make excuses or whatever. But,
100%. Yeah, but I find it interesting that you prefer the solo activity, because I am very similar, and I think that podcasting, while you do have guests and you have loose members of the team in this series or this show, true, and it does take other people to make the fun happen, but the enterprise of it, the operations of it, it's your baby. And you covet the look and the feel, and it needs to be your way. And I'm cut this exactly the same way, and I'm not a good team member. I don't play well with others, so I'm kind of that way.
I love hearing. Well, I shouldn't say that. I love hearing people I respect's opinion on what I do, and if they listen to it. There's a lot of people who say, "Oh, you should do this." Okay, well, have you ever listened to a show? No. Okay, so you don't really know the format. You don't really. You're just saying this because you wanted to tell me something.
That's the world today.
There's so much of that, and that frustrates me so bad. Like, do you really think that, or do you just want to say the opposite so I notice you, or you have an opinion? It's so easy your opinion to be like, "Oh, that's lame." That's so easy. That's so lazy.
Yeah. So maybe there's a bunch of reasons for that. One of them, I think, is it's just too easy today to have an opinion, because there's so many outlets. There's so many inputs, but there's also all these outlets that just spew shit out there. So everybody's kind of conditioned to think that they have to have an opinion on everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I have to tell Chris how to do his show. Of course I do.
I think that's one thing that I like about myself, is that if I don't know about a topic, I just refrain from speaking on it. Mm-hmm. I don't need to pretend to have an opinion on it. The things that I do have an opinion on are because I formulated my own thoughts, and that's really what I think. If you have a convincing argument, I love when people change my mind, because then it's like we're both growing. I'm understanding this. Oh, I've never even thought of it that way. Now I feel more fulfilled because it's a new thought. Mm-hmm. It's like those people you see like, oh, I'll never change, oh, I keep it real kind of thing. Like, you've never changed. If I was the same person that I was 5 years ago, I would hate it. And I feel like you should always, change isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it's growth. Growth can be change.
So to get growth, you have to be open to change, which means you have to have humility.
Yes,
and
that's
it kind
key.
of starts there, I think, and we don't see a lot of that today.
I think you're absolutely right on that. It is like, and it's similar to being happy. Like, you have to want to kind of be happy. You have to want to have that growth, to have that change. And growth isn't always easy. It rarely is, but it's good for you. And I think people like to do what's easy. I like to do what's easy. That's what I was saying for the first, 20, 25 years of my life. I just do what's easy, but not what's fulfilling, not what I like. And it would... doing what's easy, it didn't work out in the long run. And then even doing something smaller that I did myself, that I put my effort in, at the end of the day, it's more fulfilling.
But you were able to recognize it. And oftentimes people can't recognize that. So I believe that decades ago, life was not as easy to exist. You had to be a little more industrious to be able to maneuver through life. I think there's a lot of mechanisms in today's society which enable you to pretty much take the easiest path and exist, if that's all you want. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I just think that's kind of the way it is. And I think that breeds a little more, laziness is a tough word to use, but that breeds a little more like just apathy. Yeah. Like people just existing and not driven by much.
I agree.
You
And
know?
I think, I mean, you could look around at TVs today or whatever. The TV in my living room is probably, based on inflation and stuff, probably a third of what, what my parents could have been.
Of course.
And it's 10 times as nice. Just all these things that they're so accessible to everybody. So it's almost like, you see the kid who has the car that he earned. He bought it himself. He worked, 2 jobs over the summer and bus tables in high school, and he bought his own beat up car versus the guy who got it from his parents who just trashes it. He doesn't care. You could tell the difference. Now, maybe that car is nicer, but for the fulfillment, and now people think, oh, maybe I need these things and stuff, but I feel like earning something is more fulfilling.
Yeah, leisure is cultivated, it seems. Like leisure, I think in today's society, leisure is encouraged almost. Whereas maybe above work in some circles, where I don't know if in prior generations, or let's just say prior decades, it was quite the same. Elements of it, but now I think we really think about making our life as easy as possible, physically, mentally. We order takeout food, which is insane as it is. That we pay people to make food for us. If you really drill down there, it's kind of strange. But then that's not good enough. We pay people to bring it to us. Now we don't pay the place we buy it from to bring it to us. We pay a person to go get the food for us at a location and bring it to us.
Right.
We have massive screen televisions and every streaming device imaginable, phones that'll do everything but cook your breakfast. I guess society's encouraging leisure. And that maybe where we're just going to it like pigs to a trough. We're just willingly just going there. And it's kind of a I don't know, a dystopian thing, but that's kind of how I've been feeling for a while.
I feel like I agree with what you're saying. I feel like with almost all this technology and the innovations, it is making things easier, but then that means we have less problems. So I feel like human beings as a species love to have problems, love to create problems. So when the necessities are filled and you don't have to worry about this, and this, and you have some time on your hands, that's kind of when you pick it yourself and then find, reasons to hate other people on the internet or whatever, because you don't have, the tiger's not chasing you. You have food on the table. You don't have to worry about that.
So true.
And I also think, kind of part 2 on that is a lot of the jobs now you can do from home. You can do on the computer. There's less interaction with people, and there's less like kind of working with your hands. I feel like, and I don't know how it was, 100 years ago or whatever, but I feel like, I think when there's a physical aspect and you're kind of going there and working, I feel better than how I would working on a computer. And I know the times are changed, but I think mentally, maybe human beings are used to working physically, getting that in. There's the serotonin or whatever comes out in your head. If you're behind a computer screen the whole day, I don't know that as a species kind of, to get in the animal kingdom of it. Like would any animal, if you put it in front of a screen, would it be happier like that? I feel like there's so much that we do just to get by, and it's, okay, this will give me the most money, but will it give me the most happiness? Do I need to have that much money? Is there diminishing returns at a certain point?
I don't even know if that's even going on much anymore. I think we're just so struck with leisure and laziness, and lazy in regards to least amount of effort to get the acceptable result.
Yeah.
I just wonder
Instantly.
how driven, like if you take I don't know, you take like 100,000 people. How many of those folks are really driven to go out and squeeze every amount of life out of it? I'm not really sure there's a lot.
I think it's probably the people who own it and have their name on it, and they're willing to go out and do that. I don't know that the employee necessarily, okay, maybe I'll cut corners. Like we were saying earlier, if I'm going to edit my own video or if I'm going to do my own sound, I'm not going to half-ass it. I'm going to do it the way I want, where maybe, I don't know, if it's not your name on it, if it's not you, okay, I'm going to mail it in to do the least amount to get, passable grade.
Yeah, no, I think that philosophy's been around a long time.
Oh, yeah.
But your point's well taken, because I think that's being made easier in today's society.
Yeah.
The leisure is something, man. When you think about how many people simply want to go home and turn on the 75-inch television in ultra high definition and binge watch a Netflix show and eat takeout, right? Drink, whatever they do, but not worried about their sedentary lifestyle, not worried about, and then grab their phone up and communicate with other people about the TV show online.
Yeah.
And sometimes argue about stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, what are we doing? Like, what kind of life is this?
After you just go out to like the mountains or just go for a walk in the fall, like I don't want to sound like, I'm anti-TV and stuff. I like watching football. I like watching a movie here and there. But like to make it your entire lifestyle, I really think like physiologically or whatever it is, like being outside, being in the sun, being in nature, like it makes me feel way better, and I can't be the only one. And I think because everything is so easy, I can watch whatever I want on my phone. I can watch it on the toilet. I can watch it in every room in the house. It'll rotate so I don't miss a scene walking from the bedroom to the kitchen. I feel like almost like I don't know, as far as happiness and I don't know, getting the most out of life, kind of get back to basics. Family, going outside and just being in nature, just laughing with somebody. After you start doing that, right? After you start doing that, looking at TV, you're like, what was I even doing? I don't miss it. Yeah.
So you and I both produce podcasts, so it's a tad not hypocritical, but it's interesting that we're probably bashing the medium that we both partake in. But we seem to be more spectators today than we are participants when it comes to this big thing called life.
Yeah. Well, I'm so interested in human beings and just anything, and with life form in general, because I not to get too like introspective, but like I don't understand why anything exists. Just thinking, like I get overwhelmed almost. I'll wake up at like 4 a.m. and I'll just get in my own head because that's what I love to do, and I'll think of like the beginning of time, and then I'm like, well, what happened before that? But what happened before
when you figure that out? Let me know, because I'd love to know too.
And then it makes me think, okay, there's really no answer that's acceptable for me for what's before that. And even if you do, it's always like the plus one. Like you could always just say, okay, well then what's before that? So the fact that I will never know, that means what do I know? So get out there and just go accomplish things, because it's a weird kind of way to go. That's the way my mind works. But it's like, if this whole experience of life is strange, I don't understand it. So make the most of it. Be as good to people as I can be, because not just because it's right, but it makes me happy. Like I like being good to other people. It makes me happy. And I don't really remember the point I was getting at, but it just people in general. I do like to study. You were saying as an observer.
Yeah.
I think I like to watch other people and then compare it to myself and take the good things I see in other people.
It's called learning.
Right.
But I was saying more that, though, I think we're encouraged as a society to be sedentary as opposed to active.
Yeah.
Not just physically, but even mentally, industriously, is that a word?
Yeah.
Just doing things and accomplishing things. We're kind of pushed. Society seems to be pushing you on the couch.
Yeah.
Sit down.
Well, I feel like they have more
food,
control.
Grab your phone, watch the television. That's where I think society's kind of pushing people, and a lot of our society is just going there.
Yeah. Well, it is easy. There's no like requirement to get in to watch TV. You put it on to watch your phone or whatever. And now even worse with that, at least on TV, you have to watch a TV show. Now there's the clips of 8 seconds that if you don't hit that, it's just instant gratification. I need to see.
Yeah.
TikTok or whatever video it is, which it does sound hypocritical because I'll put out a reel from a show or whatever, but it's not because, I think it's great. I want you to listen to the whole show. So this is just a little, tease of it more than this is my content.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. And, here's two guys, bagging on the internet and the screens when we both throw our conversations out there on the screens, but so be it. So you've got this last incarnation of Poor Man's Podcast, you've crossed the 2-year threshold, right?
Well, we're, I guess, 1.5 years. So we started in April of 2021.
Okay.
So yeah,
you're basically putting it together in 2020.
Yes. So I'd say from December. Maybe I got some of the equipment in December, and then I just put it off until April because, like I was saying, that's always what I would do. Like that is a recurring theme of I feel like I underachieved. I would just do enough to get by, and then there we go. And like I said, I would always say, "Oh, yeah, I could do it." Well, then it's time to go do it.
Right.
And I think a lot of people say, "I can do it," and then it's time to go do it.
Right.
So yeah, I put it off for probably 2 months, but I also wanted it. It's very important, and everybody that I asked, don't half-ass the microphones. Don't cut corners on sound and things like that. If you could be the most interesting person in the world, if it's staticky, you're not going to listen to it. So make sure the quality's good. Once I got that, every week I just try to learn from my mistakes. What didn't I do well? What did I do well? Like a football player watching film. Mm-hmm. I would do that every week. Okay. And then I'll listen back to it. Why'd I say so many times? Then I'd have the video, and then I'd try to learn that. And I don't know anything about sound or video. You just watch YouTube videos and you learn. So I would do that. And then, like I said, we have the video aspect. I realize I can't stop rubbing my fingers. A lot of people are listening and watching it. I'm like, why do I keep I guess I have like a nervous tick that I've realized I do all the time.
You do yoga or something? Or meditate or what?
It's something about I don't know what it is. It's a great podcast for people not watching, but I would just rub my fingers together. But there's small things you pick up on.
Oh yeah, that
you wouldn't pick up on before.
Well, you can overanalyze yourself and become ultra critical. I've been there, and and I've slowly moderated my stupid little mistakes, but I find other ones that I now make. So I think, as long as you're aware that probably you're going to be a work in progress all the time, be okay with that, and just try to make the changes where you can. But if you overanalyze it, you will drive yourself nuts.
Absolutely. You'll listen to it and be like, oh, I said there you go 3 times in 4 sentences. And then you think like, oh my God, everyone's listening. They probably tuned it out while they were making a left.
No, I don't think there's rare moments that you can really embarrass yourself.
Yeah.
In today's society, especially. As a matter of fact, the things that would embarrass me as a child today, I believe would be totally acceptable. No one would give it a passing blow.
Yeah.
We live in a very strange time for this mid-50s guy, but it's interesting. It definitely is interesting. So you've got these group of shows under your belt here. What are some of the takeaways on the positive? If you have to look back, maybe reoccurring things that have happened, or you've had moments on the show, what positives do you take away from this experience?
I would say the biggest one is the people that I meet, just being around like-minded people who want to do anything. And it's not, a given. I work in a restaurant, and I've worked in, dry cleaners and stuff. And I love a lot of the people I work with, and they're all great. But a lot of people are just kind of satisfied in getting by. And, I'm not diminishing anyone's job. It's just I want to do more than just a job. I want to do something creative. Mm-hmm. And I was around people who, and I'm not blaming them, but like if I'm around people and we go out, then I'm going to go out and I'm going to be out longer than I should, and then I'm going to feel like crap the next day. I feel better when I'm kind of with like-minded people who are creating things, and now I feel good, and now I'm energized to go do the next thing. And I feel like I'm just at a certain point in my life where I'm ready to create something or just break from the things that I know weren't working.
Right.
Just keep throwing stuff at the wall. Maybe something will stick eventually. And it seems like this has me on the right path.
What about guests and so forth?
Guests, I've been very lucky with guests. I haven't had people, like drop out or say they'll show up and then not be there. Mm-hmm. Every guest I've had communicates, which is huge with me. Like, I understand stuff happens all the time. Communicate. Mm-hmm. But I've been very lucky with all of that. Everyone I've had on, I don't have a bad thing to say about any of them. There are people who have been on who you kind of don't expect to kind of go the angle they went, and it was way more interesting than I thought. Mm-hmm. There's people that you think are going to bring it more, and they're there. I mean, if you pry it out of them, there's something, but you would think, if you're on a podcast, they want more than a yes or no answer. Elaborate, usually.
Yeah, so rationally, I knew at the beginning that not every show was going to be a home run. I knew this before I ever started.
Yeah.
Of course, anyone would kind of get that. But I had the misfortune of having a couple really good episodes right out of the gate. And I just started to build this opinion that, oh my God, I mean, it's like the easiest thing I've ever done. It's so natural. And then I ran into a guest who it was like I had to pull the words out of their mouth. And it was very uncomfortable. And I was still new to it. You know, I've been talking for my career. I've done radio and I, getting sales presentations and speeches and all that stuff. But I'm telling you, Chris, I had to pull the words out, and then you add all the other things that they're worried about, which is the mic and the cameras and the lights and all that stuff. I was like having a moment like, holy shit, I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I was almost doubting myself when I ran across that first difficult guest.
The one thing I will say that's lucky for me, you're doing this one-on-one most of the time. I have Shay, who's on the show most of the time. I have Cheech, who's on the show almost all the time. Even if there is a guest who's not necessarily into it, I can kind of throw something off them, and based on what their answer is, I can kind of bring it back.
Still a skill set to do that, though.
Oh, I try. That's something every week that I will listen to, and if I listen back, then I'm like, oh, I could have done this instead. That would have been a better segue or whatever. And I do. I just want to be better at it each week. And I think if I listen back to my early episodes and I listen back to some of the newer ones, I can definitely tell there's like more confidence, there's more relaxed tone. So I do think that I'm improving on that a little bit, but
it's tough. And being self-critical is probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. It's a hit to the ego right off the bat. Number two, it's kind of personally embarrassing. Like when you see yourself in an awkward moment, it's almost kind of cringeworthy, although no one else is seeing. Actually, that was bad. But it's probably one of the best learning experiences I've had in that it has forced me to gain a considerable amount of humility. And then a couple shows in, maybe 20 shows in, I started to think, how can I take this newly found humility and try to bring it into the mantra for the show? And that's when we started crafting the mantra in regards to humility. And it really kind of helped me formulate a mission that how I was going to approach every show. A little esoteric, but it was like I want to really put humility at the forefront of everything. And then my conversation started to get really good. Once I really was there to absorb everything out of that conversation that I could, even if it really wasn't, if I was having a bad day or I wasn't feeling that hot or it was like it wasn't resonating with me, I forced myself to be really present. That's what this show did for me personally. It forced me to be humble and be present more. So I can take that into my personal life, which I have, and it's been really rewarding.
Yeah, that is a good call. Having that conversation, being present, listening, like actually listening to somebody. I feel like that's another thing that people don't do. And I think doing a podcast has helped because when I talk to somebody, I've always listened, but now I really listen thinking, what can I say back? What can I offer back? Thinking like, okay, if this was a recorded conversation, I can't just be like, So I do listen more. It makes me a better listener with my girlfriend, with my kids, with whatever part. It's not just, okay, yeah, whatever. And then you kind of half listen and
it made me realize
go
how
nowhere.
bad. Yeah, and I always thought I'm a great listener. And I think if you have a little business success, you delude yourself to believe that you have this listening thing down pat. And I just wrote about this that I realized a couple shows in that I was an average listener at best, and I also realized that you can go quite far in business with average listening skills if you have kind of the rest of the package. You don't have to be an exemplary listener. But I needed to really improve. And that's the one thing I can hold my hat on that this show's brought me was the awareness that my listening skills needed improvement. And it put me on a path to kind of fix that. Far from perfect, but kind of fix that. And I think we shared this one story, and I want to repeat this to you in case you have a similar story. I'd like to hear it. I was never so aware of how far my skills had come, which was great, but how bad they must have been for my guests when I was on a podcast.
Oh yeah,
and the host, wonderful human being, but just stepped all over every thought I tried to put out there. And it was certainly not intentional, but they are unaware. They probably haven't had really any critical feedback from anyone else, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But they're stepping on every guest's words, and they're not contributing much to the actual conversation. It's more like reaffirmation comments, and my point was that I realized right away at that moment, that some of the listening skills that are generally fantastic if there's no cameras, reaffirmation, let people know that you understand. Some of that doesn't play well with podcasting. You've got to shut your damn mouth.
Absolutely. I've definitely found that out. Listening back to, I listen to every episode, and I will listen to other podcasts, and it'll bother me when I listen to other podcasts. I'm like, why are they talking over each other? And then I'll listen back to mine. I'm like, why am I talking over them? I have the guest on because I want to hear what they have to say. So I ask them, and then they say something. And I do think it's with the way my mind works too. Because if anybody says, like, you'll be halfway through a question, you'll say one word, and it'll make me think of, something in 8th grade that happened with that word. That just threw me off right there.
No, just listening and people stepping on.
Oh, right. Yeah. So I would listen back, and I would definitely interrupt. And I've definitely tried my best to not do that. We have the guests on, and we want to hear them. But to get back to like how I was saying, it's more difficult to have one-on-one. Like it's all on you if the guest isn't great. It's kind of a burden too for me because now I have 4 people. So even if I'm not talking over, I have to also rely on everybody else to not talk over.
Interesting.
So it's a lot of it is hosting, a lot of it's trying to be funny, a lot of it's having a good conversation, but a lot of it is like, let's wrangle this, let's keep it on task. Let's not scream. And I know if we're normally in a conversation, that's how we would talk, and that's fun because we all know each other. For a guest out there, we just hear people screaming over each other, you're not going to listen to another one. So, I mean, or if you might, but it's not, I don't think that's a good way to have people view the show as just screaming over each other.
No, you can listen to talk radio on any terrestrial radio station and get that. I think of like a very popular Pittsburgh sports show that's on, it's on the Fan, take your pick, but very wildly popular. But it drives me nuts when they get excited. They're literally talking over each other. They're the two hosts are in combat to get airtime often, and it's like, holy shit, I would never want to be involved in something like that.
I think we were discussing this last time too. Anymore on radio, it's you hear people yelling over each other for 2 minutes and then 18 minutes of commercials. Every day.
I'm only been listening recently because the Steelers stuff. It's I try to stay away from talk radio.
Yeah,
when I can. But the Steelers things are so interesting right now.
Yeah, the talk radio I think is the worst. But even some of the other things in the morning, like I know all about plumbers and lawyers in Pittsburgh. I promise you, I know all of them now, just from listening to an hour a day. On any station, you listen one day, all about Matt Mertz and Shenderovich.
Yeah, later in the day it turns to Rotor Rooter, and who's the other one? Edgar Snyder. I guess. So we know these names.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I guess it shows how important it is to advertise, but it is at a certain point. I hear it too much.
Agreed. What also is interesting too that I learned about podcasts when I started my own, and then I set out to look at others people's. There were people that were starting podcasts, and I realized this right away, and I tried to make sure I didn't go down this road. But folks were starting their own podcast because I really think they just kind of wanted to hear themselves talk behind a microphone.
Absolutely. I try to have some segments, but if you don't really have going into it with a little bit of prep, at least knowing something about your guest, a lot of it can turn into just, okay, yeah, let's talk back and forth. Okay, you're talking about a movie you saw. You just want to hear yourself. Exactly. You just want to hear yourself talk to your friend, and then after your 3rd episode, you'll never do it again.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. But when you see podcasters continually keep cranking shows out, which I commend the effort and the consistency, absolutely. But when they continue to talk over their guests and they just can't flip and shut up, at that point, I'm realizing that they're just kind of doing it, I think, because they want to have their name on something and they want to talk. They almost would be better off not having guests, just coming on
yeah.
once, just giving commentary for half an hour. You know, I don't want to do that, but there are people that want that, and some that are good at it.
Yeah.
But they'd be better served doing that. If you're starting a podcast because that's what you really want, then don't bring anybody else on.
Especially, yeah, if you don't have plans on, interacting with them, if you just want to have your kind of pulpit to say what you want to say, and then you kind of pepper in, okay, I have this guy with me to, occasionally say something. I agree. There's definitely some narcissism in just listening to your own voice or just watching yourself. You see that on every kind of platform anymore. I mean, you see a million pictures of yourself. You see a million videos of yourself. There's nothing wrong with it, but it exists. So I'm just saying it does.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me. You'll get a chuckle out of this. So this was going to initially be the Boogie Street podcast. I was going to talk primarily music related in the very beginning and use the name that I already had, the trademark name, and kind of keep the same theme.
Right.
I didn't want my name on it at all. And then I thought, well, if I don't want to do only music, I'm probably going to do an open genre show. Probably shouldn't have Boogie Street on there because it's a musical theme thing. So then I figured, well, I guess I got to put my name. I did not want to put my name on there, but I could not come up with a cool, catchy kind of thing to use in place of it,
You just didn't want your name to be the name?
I didn't, no. And then once I started, I'm like, well, it's too late now. I want to do it so bad, and I'm ready to go, but I don't have a name. I'm not going to do Boogie Street because it's got too much musical connotation there. I could have maybe crafted it differently, but I wasn't a fan of doing that, putting my name on it. Once I got it there, it is what it is, so be it. But it's a reminder to me to shut my damn mouth. And I'm far from perfect, but I just have had a lot of examples now of watching other podcasts or being on a few, some fantastic. I've envied podcasters that I've done. You run a first-class operation, and you run a very, very complex operation live compared to what I'm doing. And I had a great experience being on there. I've had a great experience with every, hands down, I can't give you one negative experience I've had. It's an honor to be asked to be a guest, but it's interesting to observe the performance.
Yeah.
And you can learn from everything naturally, but when you're talked over, it just was hard. I realized how hard it was to be a guest when you got to keep your thoughts together, and the host is talking over top of you. It's like, well, I got lost two or three times in the conversation. So
yeah, I definitely I like being a guest on certain shows because I feel like it takes a lot more of the pressure off me. Because you were just saying how I do some of the stuff live. So when I'm doing the video, if you're ever watching it on any of the platforms that you can see it. Everything you're watching,
they are
there's on YouTube and Facebook.
And you're at is it 365live.com?
565 Live is.
a guess.
Yeah. You were close. There's 202 Tacos. There's 1867 Tattoo across the street. I'm pretty sure on Lincoln Avenue in Bellevue, it's just they just say what the address is and then add live or tacos or whatever it is. But yeah, so we're at 565 Live. We're down in the basement. They do like open mic stuff there. So I really like that because there's already kind of a comedy community there. They understand kind of the stage. They know the atmosphere. So a lot of the comedians that come on are kind of comfortable when they come in there. They know the area. Not that we have like a live audience in there, but we do stream it live. And some people do get nervous for that. A lot of, the performers I've had on don't, but... I think when I tell people that, it's an added element that certain people kind of get nervous about.
Yeah, you're on a stage. I can see how someone who's not done a podcast before, anyone who walks in here is going to be absolutely freaked out because it's bizarre. But yours is on a stage, so someone that's not done a podcast, you're like, that's a little. Yeah, it could be a little.
You definitely have the cameras here now. We have, I have like some cameras we set up. That's the most difficult thing is that we have to set up and tear down the stage every week.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. So you get really good with learning the microphones and stuff. That's one thing I have to commend Cheech, who does the show with me. He does a lot of the setting up of things. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing I wouldn't let anybody do. I need to make sure all the microphones are on. Now I trust him to do that, and he sets a lot of stuff up. But it's so hard giving up some of that control with any of it. But I hope it looks good at least.
It does. It's very professional. You have done a significant amount of shows now, so let's talk about what didn't go well.
Okay.
Certainly not looking to out any particular guest at all. It's not what I'm after. What have been some of the disappointments if there has been any disappointments in the process?
Okay. I know the worst show, and it was probably our show with Ray Zawodny, and I'm not calling him out because it had nothing to do with him. It was 100% the technical difficulties during the show we did there, because all of the other Zoom calls that I had done before, we kind of had to with some of it.
So you're doing Ray from New York.
Ray, yeah, he was doing it from New York.
Got it.
So he zoomed in, we got him on, and then there was a problem with the sound, and then there's something else. So that ended up just being a whole thing, and we haven't done a Zoom since. So that's one thing that was the worst, because I mean, we got like a 20-minute interview after everything got said and done, but it was just choppy. The whole interview, I was focused on the audio just not cutting out, and it just, even if it sounded all right, Ray was great. It wasn't up to my standard as a host, as a production. I wasn't a fan of it, and I haven't done a Zoom show since, and I won't do a Zoom show. I mean, unless it's like, I don't know, if Tom Brady wants to come on or whatever, I'll make an exception for, something like that. But anymore, it's just the conversation's choppy. It's not, there's something like, not inauthentic, but it's not traditional back and forth. There's a delay.
It doesn't look natural to me.
No. And there's something about being in the presence of somebody in person where it's completely different to talking to a TV.
Yeah, I fight them hook and crook. I will not do one as a rule of thumb, but I use a caveat, like you said, if one of my artist friends from the past wants to do something, I might think about it, because it would be just a cool experience.
Right.
But it might not be.
Yeah.
I'd rather have them in studio, because I just don't think that I don't think there's anything special about a Zoom show. I could be sitting in the corner of my basement doing one with, some fake props in the back that no one would ever know where I'm at. And, is that cool? Some people might think it is. To me, it's not real authentic at all.
I know from doing both of them. I record a sports show as well on Wednesdays with sports guy JP, he's pretty knowledgeable about sports. I always like talking to him, but a lot of times we have to do it through the phone, or I'll FaceTime him or whatever, because then the audio will go through the computer and it sounds a little bit better. Like, those are small things you kind of pick up on. If I can call through the computer versus on my phone or whatever, it sounds a little bit better. And we've gotten it down where it sounds pretty decent. We know like the pauses. But it's still, even with the rapport that we've been doing, I think we're on show like 77 for the actual Poorman's podcast, and then we've probably done 30 sports shows. So like, I think on iTunes or Apple Music it says we are like at 104 episodes, but we've only done like 80 real podcasts, and then
but they're all on the same channel though.
Right, they're all on the same channel.
Okay.
But that's what I'm saying is I've have this rapport with him, and it's still, even over the phone, it's not what it would be in person.
Okay. Yeah, I believe that. And when I started this, I was insistent that the guests had to come here, and it was interesting because the initial invitations went out, and the first response was, "Well, is it a Zoom show?" I mean, this is before the pandemic. This is 2019, early 2019. People were conditioned to believe that it was going to be done online. And when I said, no, this is an in-person show, we didn't get everybody. A couple people, I think, turned it down because they didn't want to be bothered. And it's a new podcast. And for some folks, they either don't understand it or they just don't want to be bothered. And that was totally fine. Yeah. But I think we lost a couple because we weren't doing a virtual show. Mm-hmm. To this day, 3 years in, I will tell you, I don't want to do a virtual show. Nothing beats what we're doing right here. Being here, the atmosphere, the intensity of the conversation, nothing beats this that I have found.
I think if you're doing a podcast, something like this, where it's a conversation, you can't do it. Now, if you're teaching, a college lecture, maybe you can do that.
100%.
Maybe if you're having a group meeting and you need to
well, even your sports ones too. I think that kind of stuff. But when you talk about getting into an extended conversation.
Where it's back and forth. You're right. With the sports one, we're kind of talking stats. There's a break, and you automatically know where we're going to go. We're going to review the Steelers and the Bills. We're going to preview Cincinnati or whatever, Kansas City or Tampa Bay or whatever it is. We're going to do that, and then we're going to have that same format, and we know pretty much what we're going to say. Mm-hmm. But when it's a conversation where we don't know what the next person's going to say, where the conversation is going to go, it's too choppy, and it's not enjoyable to listen to because it's an unnatural pause. And it doesn't sound like human beings are having a conversation almost. 100%.
I think the intimacy of the environment with both people being there. Like, I'll give you an example of what I have observed casually. I'm not a big fan of these types of shows, but Shannon Sharp and the writer from Dallas,
Skip Bayless,
yeah. They do a sports talk show.
Yeah.
I think it's nightly or once a week or whenever it is. But they're at a round table, just the two of them, and they're going at it. And once in a while, I guess someone introduces them or they'll bring somebody on the screen. But the intimacy of that show, them being there and looking at each other in the eye and the passion of it, it's real visible to, and I think audibly you can hear it, but it's very visible to the guest about how intense that is. I don't know if you can do that, sitting there looking into a screen. I just don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
there's something there.
I agree. I think it has to be in person, and I don't know what the magic is. I think it's just not that. I think that's just how it's meant to be. Like for humans, like we try to do too much with technology and thing, and we lose like the soul. And I feel like that's kind of where it is.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's something organic about being in the same room.
Like we were talking about music. You can listen to somebody, maybe he plays the right chords or whatever, but there's no emotion in it, and it's not okay. Yeah, that sounds like a song would sound, but there's no soul in it. There's no emotion behind it, and that's what makes it kind of from just talking to something enjoyable, almost like an art.
Oh yeah. How do you handle like politics when a guest maybe will start going down a road? Have you had to deal with that yet?
Not too much. My whole thing with politics is I don't like endorsing anything because I don't support anybody 100% ever. So I feel weird getting behind somebody to do that. If somebody wants to talk about a conversation, I don't want to get into super divisive, topics that are going to polarize people. That's not why they're listening. If you want to listen to that, you listen to whatever, news outlet you want. And a lot of it is, what the hell do I know? Like, I have an opinion on it, but I don't really know. So I don't know that I'm comfortable with my, what I have to say, going out. Like, I'm trying to be responsible. There are people who are listening. And if I don't know, then maybe I shouldn't talk on that. But if there's a subject that I have an opinion on that like I said, that I've formed based on what I think, I will discuss it, and it's because I've thought about it and I have a reason behind it. Mm-hmm. If somebody has a different opinion, I'm opening to listen to it, but maybe we'll listen to it after the show. It depends what it is. I don't have like this is the way it goes. If I feel like it's going to hinder the show or people, not that people won't like it, but like if I feel like it's not has its place right there, if it doesn't have its place there, I'll sway it a different way, or say, okay, well, how about this?
Right.
Kind of thing.
You hadn't had anybody, or maybe there hasn't been any obtuse moments or anything odd at this point.
No, nothing like that. I steer away from our show's more. I mean, like we like to have interesting conversations, but then it's also like, okay, let's talk about some obscure thing. Let's talk about the Mighty Ducks from the 90s. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about something like that. Right. That's more kind of, it's more, we want it to be lighthearted.
Right. Like variety based?
Yeah. We don't want it to be, this is our hard stand on this. That's not what I want.
You don't want the show to have a stand.
Yeah. I mean, I want it to be conversation. I want it to be fun.
Right.
I don't feel like there's ever a time where comedian here and me talking are experts in anything that we should be discussing, like on certain things like that. If I go on somebody else's show and they ask me, I'll answer. I don't have a problem talking to it. I just would rather talk about what I have them on to talk about.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And that's an interesting philosophy, and that is what I essentially am doing here. My thought's always been if they want to get that stuff, there's lots of media outlets to go get it. I don't have to be another one. Now,
Yeah.
Rocco Koza, my attorney friend, and I do a show every 2 weeks, a conversation, usually 30 to 50 minutes, and we look at the headlines and we just start bantering about it. We're very similar. I think we're moderates. He leans pretty strongly to the right. I'm pretty much in the center. But regardless of all that, we look at issues, and sometimes it's laughable.
Yeah.
And we're both not afraid to say on an issue, we don't know.
Yeah.
Or we're just indifferent. We don't care enough about that to have an opinion.
I think
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's more accurate of what the average person is like. Because you listen to talk radio for sports, for politics, it's always like hyperbole that gets the listens. It has to be the worst or the best or this is the GOAT. You hear that in sports all the time. Oh, he's the GOAT. Why? Because he made a catch on one Sunday. We'll see where he is next week. It's just, it has to be, it's always the end of the world. Like, oh, Trump said this or Biden said this, regardless of what it is.
It's the end of the world.
Yeah, I feel like people see that. If you really want any change, don't go to the politics. Make a change in your own community and, do things like that. Start on a smaller level. If you're expecting anyone in government to help you out, then good luck.
Yeah, I learned that as a young boy. I mean, nothing. It's funny, like everything's more caustic today and everything is more divisive today because the media pushes it.
Right. That sells.
100%. And all that divisiveness, though, and that caustic behavior was around 20, 30, 40 years ago. I can assure you it just wasn't on display 24/7 coming through your television and your airwaves.
A lot of it, too, it wasn't coming out, from everyone all the time. Everyone needs an opinion all the time. And if you had an opinion in person and people didn't like it, sometimes you got hit. And sometimes maybe, I'm not saying people should get hit, but certain people maybe... If they did, they wouldn't sound as assy, I guess. I don't know.
Tyson had it right. Some people just need to get punched in the face.
Yeah, I'm not saying they all do, but like every now and then, like you feel like you're like you're almost not in the same world anymore. Not that you should. It's not that you should physically punch, but there should be a gravity. Like you feel like you're untouchable because you're behind a keyboard where people don't know you and you think you can be an asshole. We're still your words still mean things and things.
They should.
Yeah.
They should.
But people, I guess, just post on anything anymore. Like I'm more thoughtful. If I'm going to say something, then I feel like it's because I really want to say. And then there's people who just troll you, or there's a bot that's saying something, and then.
We're conditioned now. They've tried to condition us, and I think we've let them to be guttural in our responses for everything, meaning we have to have an immediate guttural reaction to everything regardless of our knowledge base on the subject.
Yeah.
And that's not serving humanity well.
Yeah. Instant, whatever the headline is, you immediately feel one way or the other. And it's usually either
we're not wired that way as humans.
Yeah.
To do that.
It doesn't need to be. But I think that goes back to the news thing of it. This is like the number one, or they do the thing where it's with all the murderers and stuff now, or you need to do this because your kids will. They do the thing where they make the mom fear for their kids. There's so much of the advertising and just things that exist just based on fear, like consumer fear.
Oh, it's ridiculous. I do a lot of walking at night. I tend to go out usually, later in the evening. And if I were to prescribe my day according to the news services, I would never leave my freaking house for fear that I was going to be shot, stabbed, or
Yeah,
it's nuts. You can't buy into the narrative that we're living in a terrible world.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to just the bad stories get the more clicks, get the more views. I'm sure there's as much good as there is bad. Nobody wants to hear a good story on the news. You're not going to click in to hear about the puppy that got rescued. I mean, you might, but you're going to listen to the serial killer twice as much.
In the early 80s, when I was a very young person, cable news was just coming around, and TBS was a thing out of Atlanta, Ted Turner. And then he later found CNN, but TBS had a show called The Good News.
Okay.
And it would air, I thought it was like every evening, or maybe just once a week. And it was 30 minutes of just good things.
Yeah.
It lasted like a couple months. It was gone. No one wants that shit, man.
Yeah.
Everybody wants the
Yeah, it's always nice to see. Like you'll scroll through and see something nice, but it's not what you're clicking on. It's not what I mean. The numbers speak for themselves. If the good stories did sell, then you'd see good stories.
If it bleeds, it leads, man.
Yeah.
That's a horrible, horrible thing, but that seems to be reality. We all have a voice, right? The internet's amazing. It does the humanity good by giving everybody a voice. And equally, the internet's terrible because it gives everybody a voice.
Right, yeah.
It's like we don't all deserve a voice, I don't believe.
Or at least if you're going to have a voice, don't just have a voice for having a voice. Have an opinion that you thought out and have something to say. I like, even if it's not, groundbreaking, but like have a point to get to. If it's a movie podcast or whatever, get to your point.
If you can't defend your position, then you shouldn't utter it.
And that's what I was saying with people that I see so many people. And I do the podcast in Bellevue, and then I work in Beaver. There's very different people that live in Pittsburgh, that live in Beaver.
Certainly.
Politically.
Certainly. Well, it's funny. You're probably going to say that I'm guessing that it's more liberal in Bellevue and it's more conservative in Beaver. And I will tell you how that's changed because Beaver County was very liberal 30, 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's kind of changed over time. Interesting.
Yeah. But you see people, and I don't know. I feel like I think so much of it is just getting it out there. Get it out there. It doesn't have to be right. It just has to be fast. It just has to be an opinion. Let's get it out there, and then people are going to forget about it. But we had this, however many thousand clicks on it there, and then
they're being
people
conditioned.
Won't. Yeah, and if you're going to fact check it, what? Okay, everybody already stopped caring by the time you figured it out because that's how fast
the world moves so fast. Yeah, it's I don't know if our brains are equipped to handle it. I think we're being inundated so quickly with so much. We've kind of like given up. Like critical thought is still in the back of our mind. Mm-hmm. The ability to do it, I believe it. But we've just kind of, the overload of inputs, we've just given into it. It's too easy just to like, oh yeah, that must be right. Go team.
It's almost, I feel like it's almost like a zombie mentality where it's like, let's just watch the TV or watch whatever screen. And I don't want to sound like, grandpa, like, oh, with your new machines, because I'm not anti-internet and stuff. Like we were saying, we do podcasts. The internet's great for a lot of things. Mm-hmm. Don't make it your entire life. Use it as a tool. Don't make it your life, I don't think. It's nice to, have the weather and everything handheld so you can go do things outside, so you can go hang out with your friends, so you can go have a conversation. Don't let it be your life.
100%.
Yeah.
So, in regards to choosing guests, how do you guys operate that?
So,
is it by invite only?
Yeah. I've had a couple people kind of reach out, but I book my guests like a month in advance or so, and people, like we were saying, they want instant gratification for a lot of it. So if it's not like that week or something, some people aren't into it. But the people that will, commit to it are usually better, the people you want to have on anyway. But we have been having a lot of comedians on. We have a recurring foodie that comes on, Michelle, who's awesome. She, tells us she does like a different best of, best wings, best food truck. She did things like that. I work in a restaurant. Cheech is a chef we both have a big passion for food. I love food. I can't cook it. I'm around it. I understand some of it. In actual, functionality, I'm not a great chef, but I love watching cooking shows. I love the science behind all of it. And when she comes on, it's just interesting, hearing some of the local restaurants, some of the places you've never heard of, and the Greasy Spoons at the diners and stuff. Everybody might know Monterey Bay and some of the bigger ones, but there's some really nice diners and gastropubs and just like some bars that have good food. You don't have to be this big place anymore to have some really quality food, and I love learning about that. I've had some singers on. I want to have more musicians on, and I do want to just kind of expand it because I've had comedians on because that's who I know.
Sure.
That's who I'm around.
Sure.
And
you're a comedy podcast.
Yeah. Right? So that's what it is. I want it to be funny. I want a comedian to be on. I also want to have some other things. Like I was telling you before, I want to have kind of like an astrophysicist physicist on, or, you know, doing some more science things, because I have some crazy questions that I just want to hear what somebody who, you know, studies it has to say. And I feel like because it's comedy that we kind of lean towards, I've had the comedians on, but if we have some of the other stuff, I bet I can make it funny. So we're going to work on, you know, having some other people on, getting them out of not out of their element, but you see like these football players and then you ask them about music and it's interesting, or these musicians and you didn't realize they could paint. You have these scientists on and you didn't realize they work on, you know, 1950s cars. There's a lot of, you know, depth to everybody. So just because you think one thing, you can find humor with anybody.
Oh yeah, I've always thought a great angle would be in this town. I tried initially didn't work out because of their contracts, but you know, we have all these talking heads on town, in, you know, all the stations, whether it's just news, whether it's sports related, but all the announcers that, you know, I was able to befriend Paul Alexander and with the concept, and the concept was we know them as Paul Alexander,
right,
with the Penguins and the Pirates. We know that,
right.
Paul Zeiss, we know Ron Cook, we know these folks,
right.
We really don't know these folks,
yeah.
So the idea would be get them to come on and give us their story.
Right. You know the newspaper, Ron Cook. You know the radio.
Right.
But do you know, the guy who did X, Y, and Z?
So I think, you know, I'm pressing, and I think that, you know, there are more that are going to sit down for the interviews, but the companies they work for are pretty stringent upon that.
Yeah.
I think it's a good angle.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the most interesting when I hear other people's podcasts, is hearing kind of their story when they were a kid, how they got to from, you know,
100%.
7th grade to
100%.
now you're on a stage at Caroline's in New York. Like, how? And what, not just because it's an interesting story, but if I listen to how everybody else did it, it's not going to be the same for everybody. But if you take, you know, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, man. These are all successful people.
See, Chris, you have that mindset where you want to learn from successful people. Now, success means everything to different people. I get it. Different for everybody. But achieving people that have achieved, you want to learn how they did it. You have an interest in learning from that. That's healthy.
Okay.
I don't think it happens very often anymore.
Right. I think the people I want to have on, and the form of success I look at is they set out a goal and they accomplished it. So they're successful in that. Different levels of it. And like you said, it means something different to everybody. But everybody I've had on is either creating their own podcast. They are doing comedy. They're recording artists and stuff. I've had some like people on that I was like, oh my God, I can't believe, like Sierra Sellers. I don't know if you know her. She's a singer. Yep. She's incredible. She lived down the street from me. There's like people in Bellevue that I didn't realize like lived around. Jeff Fieldhouse is a great comedian. He's like my neighbor down there. There's a bunch of them. And it's just cool, like reaching out to people. You don't realize like there's some talented people around here.
No question. Yeah, Pittsburgh's full of interesting folks. Now, it's probably commentary on just life in general. Every city's probably full of immensely interesting people. And maybe that's one of the benefits of the web is that, you know, the concept of celebrity was very narrow before the internet. Yeah. And as the internet's come, celebrities kind of gotten diluted. And there's always going to be like The Rock and the Kardashians and people like that. But that's an extreme example. But celebrity in general has been diluted, and I kind of think that's healthy. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
For society in general.
Right. Instead of having the 5% or whatever that's up there. I mean, the top is still the top, like you were saying, and you're not going to touch that. And it is, you know.
It's there for a reason.
Right. The best will usually rise to the top. But there is, and we were saying how everybody can have a voice and it could be bad, but there's a lot of people who have some talent who maybe didn't get to go to school for, you know, I don't know anything about recording and stuff, but I have an interest in it and I want to do it. So I think that opens up a platform where if you have the will to just go do something, I think there's something that you could gain from it. If you just want to do it, there's people who go to school and then they don't do anything with what they learn.
100%. Well, I think that was the traditional way society moved, right? We went to college and knowing that the major we're taking, strong probability we won't use any of this stuff, right? But we're doing this. You and I decided one day we're going to do podcasts, and probably if the internet didn't survive, you and I weren't qualified to be on the radio. If we had this urge to go talk on a microphone, no one was going to hire us. Yeah. So the internet created this opportunity, the ease of entry.
Right. I think there's something to be said for the structure and all that. But I think if you listen long enough, you can kind of replicate it, you know. If you watch movies and you see the way things are shot, if you're genuinely interested in it, watch a YouTube video and go out and do it. And if it doesn't look right, do it again, and then do it 8 different ways, and then do it 10 different ways after that, because it's never going to be enough. And then when you do see it, then you learn from that, and then you keep growing from there. And if you're still interested at that point, which a lot of people aren't, because they realize, oh, I have to do, you know, more than I thought. It
involves work.
Yeah. Or like just small setbacks. Like I want to go do all of this, and I forgot the extension cord. Like small things like that are real.
And they don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, it's just.
I'll do something else.
Or it rained, so now I'm not going to do it today. And then you just fall off.
Really?
I mean, there's some people that I know that look for any reason to not do anything.
But that's about learning.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned like you go to YouTube and you see examples of things you dig and you want to give it a shot. I can tell you 1,000%. I got fixated on Rogan because I needed material as I was exercising or taking long drives or driving around. And I said, wow, this is a novel idea. People sitting together and doing long, unvarnished conversations. Mm-hmm. And then, by accident, I realized it was also broadcast on YouTube because I was just downloading I had no idea this stuff was also on YouTube. When I saw the video of the show, the arrangement, you know, the mics, the whole thing. If I had not seen that, this problem probably never would have happened.
Yeah.
Because I looked and learned and said I can do something like that. I mean, I don't have the power to get those types of guests, but in my hometown, I don't see a lot of this kind of stuff going on really anywhere. I can go replicate that look, camera angle, the whole look and feel of it, but kind of make it my own. You know? But if it wasn't for Rogan doing that, we would not be sitting here.
Yeah. I think just seeing things and knowing it's possible, like just seeing it, now I know that it's possible, now I can do it. To go back to what I was saying earlier about kind of underachieving in school and things, I wanted this to be something that like, okay, I'm not going to underachieve. And I feel like when I see things, I'm a very visual learner. And if I like to, I pick up on things, I think, smaller things. So I'll be very visual. And I didn't do well reading and stuff in school. But when I can see something, or if I hear it on the radio, the cadence, whatever, this is what a radio person sounds like. This is what a comedian sounds like. So let's fake it until you make it kind of thing. I can put up some video, and then I'm just going to keep learning. You're
really not faking it. You're taking your best stab at it, trying to get as close to what you think is perfection, and then honing it. Yeah. That's not faking it. I mean, I know it's a phrase.
Yeah.
But I don't see, I mean, if that's your best effort coming out of the gate, and it's an effort to replicate where you want to be, I think that's genuine.
Thank you.
In my opinion.
Right. I think it's something, though, that you have to be a curious person or you just have to want something. Because if this wasn't something I was into, I can't fake, like, determination and things like that. If somebody asked me to do something I didn't want to, I could probably do it, but it wouldn't be the same. I wouldn't have that.
You wouldn't be vested.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing with anything. If I'm interested in it, I remember it, I learn it, and if I don't, then it sounds forced.
So back to your guests, you said it's invitational. It's kind of what we do here. Any awkward moments where you either had to tell somebody, no, or it just isn't a good fit for us, or have you been able to maneuver around those? I mean, how many people were actually asking you to be on?
I've had some like out of town comedians that'll ask to be on.
Got it.
That's the most common. I'll have people from out of town who are going to, not necessarily improv because those are more bigger names, but like some of the smaller. I'm coming to Arcade Theater. I'm coming to the Roxy Inn or whatever it is. Will you shout this out, or what will you have me on? And a lot of it is like, okay, you told me 2 days before. I don't know anything about you. Like it's not feasible. Not with the way that I run it. And it's going to sound bad, and then I'm going to be the only one who's heard from it. Like, okay, if it's a bad show, then I look bad. Nobody's going to remember who the guest was.
Yeah, I'm not sure podcasting is the best, use of their promotion. I understand why they want it, but they might be better off trying to find a little radio spot, jumping on radio a couple of days before their show or something. But that usually involves money.
Oh yeah. So they try to find it that way. I mean, if it was somebody that I had heard of and I was a fan of, then maybe it would be different. But when it's some guy I've never heard of, he just wants to do this just to sell a couple tickets.
I don't have time for how do you handle the local musician? I'm going to pick on rapping for a moment. The rappers, like, how do you handle that stuff? Where someone's put out a bunch of mixtapes, and they, in their mind, they're up and coming rapper.
So when I schedule people, I will schedule it in advance, and then I try to communicate. I'll text back with them like a week or two before, and I like to promote everything. So I'll ask for pictures or whatever.
Right.
If I can tell pretty quickly if I don't get anything back, if there's no communication. Like, if you don't communicate, I lost interest. Like, just if you want to be part of the show, like, at least have the decency to communicate. You're coming onto my show to communicate with me. If you can't do it now, well, I don't care.
Yeah.
So, but if somebody takes like genuine interest, but you can't just be like, oh, I don't even know your name. Okay, so you're not a fan of this show. You're just doing this because of this. This isn't the right audience to push this anyway.
Right.
So, like I would say for you, I don't really have a spot for it.
Yeah, it has to fit. Like,
right. If it fits, then okay. But it's a square peg in a round hole most of the time.
It is. And that's been my toughest thing so far. But I'm getting better at it. It's like telling people no.
Yeah.
Because it's harsh, and I don't like to be harsh. It really isn't harsh. Mm-hmm. But it comes off to me that it's harsh. When I tell folks I'm not inclined to take the conversation, it is not personal. Mm-hmm. It is simply that I have, and I'm older, so every moment that I'm on this earth is really valuable now. So if I want to sit down with someone for a couple hours, I have to really want to be there. Mm-hmm. The subject has to interest me. If not, then I'm just mailing it in, and I might be doing them an ego favor. But I'm not in the business to do infomercials. It's just not what I'm doing. No matter who you are,
right?
Companies will do that for you for money.
Yeah, I think it's almost harder as an interviewer too if you're not invested in it and you're just reading. Like, if I'm into it, then it's easier to go back and forth. I have these questions. I'm genuinely curious. If I'm just saying, tell me about this, and then you tell me something, and I don't understand like the references or I don't understand what you're trying to do. Then it's hard for me. Now, if I seek somebody out because I know their personality or know what they are, like, I've done that before, and I don't have a problem doing that, but it has to fit the show. You can't just force it in. If it's authentic, and maybe we're doing a theme or something where we'll have this, okay, I'll think about it, but it has to be right for the show. Yes,
it has to be, and it's really tough because I'm sure you're in the same boat. The show's evolving.
Yeah.
And you're massaging, you may have some hard, fast rules for the show, but, it's kind of evolving and it's fluid. It's a popular word, right? But being that it's fluid, there are opportunities to bend and dip and weave if you're so inclined.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's got to be selfish, man. If it's not selfish, why are you doing it?
Yeah. I want it to sound as good as I can. I want it to be as good as it can be. It's very fun, but I want it to sound professional. Like, I want it to be considered, at least production quality wise, as good as anything else.
You don't want to regress.
Right.
You've already figured that part out, and you don't want to do anything that's going to tap you down, whether it's in production, whether it's it only takes one bad experience to put a real hurt on you.
Yeah.
That's the thing about being human. It's like, we can get our feelings hurt.
Yeah. I think the biggest struggle, the when I get the most disappointed is if I ever make the same mistake twice. Like, mistakes will be made. We're doing something. We're going on location. There's moving parts every single time. But if I do it and realize I didn't plug the cord from the camera into the computer, and now the audio is just from the iPad and not from the microphones, I can edit all that if I really want to and get the sound on, and I will. But like, that's something that's happened before. That's something I should have known, and it's not something that happens all the time. But like, I'm really diligent on, like, I'm gonna make mistakes. Don't do it again.
That's why I have those little cameras you see over there, just in case something would go.
Yeah.
'Cause the sound quality on those two are pretty good. It's a fail safe, pal. Now, you have to build in those redundancies. You have to build in. It's a fail safe. No, I totally understand. But in the end, production matters to you. The look and feel matters to you because you know what? It's like it's your baby.
Mm-hmm. That I feel like doing the actual show is 2% of what I do. And it's fun, but it's almost like, okay, I just have to do, not that I just have to do the show, but it's like the show is the thing I'm selling to people to buy into it. Not necessarily monetarily, but their time, which is just as important. Mm-hmm. But just to get them to buy into it, it has to be all in kind of thing.
What do you have a vision for the show, or is it really just you're making it up as you go along? Like, do you have a goal? Do you have a plan for a year, a 3-year, 5-year plan?
I want it to grow, and I want it to sound as good as I can. Doing the podcast has opened up, other opportunities to go talk to other people, and I feel like I like this long form. I like the comedy, having the comedians on, and having a fun show. It's hard. I mean, you can't do an hour of material every time. But if you talk about a news story, if you talk about, we used to talk about movie characters we hated. It was a recurring thing where I had the guests come on, and then we did like a whole tournament about it. Just small things like that.
I was in that tournament. I had C-3PO. I didn't do too well.
There were. I think you went up against Terry Jones said R2-D2, and it was a Star Wars matchup in the first round, and R2-D2 I think passed C-3PO.
But whipped my butt.
Yeah, but I mean, just small things like that. See, if I had a scientist on or something, I like asking questions that they don't normally get asked, but also not like so irrelevant that like people that are listening.
Yeah.
But it makes them almost human. Like, okay, I'm not going to ask you what your favorite food or your favorite color is, but it's almost more interesting to me to know what irritates them more than what they love, because then you can commiserate with that. And I feel like it's almost easier to, to compare yourself to somebody.
Commonality.
Right, exactly. I can't find the commonality.
Yeah.
To find that place in between with things you hate.
Oh, no, Dal. Plus, it's probably going to give you great comedic material.
Right. Yeah. So when you do that, you don't have to write funny stuff if you know, like, okay, this is going to put us in a funny predicament. We'll do some improv. We'll go along, and we'll just see where it goes. Mm-hmm. And it usually is funny. I mean, sometimes it's not, but they're not always going to be funny. Hopefully, it's entertaining. Hopefully, you learn something. But more often than not, I'll listen back to it, and I think it's funny. Funny enough, more often than not.
It's funny. Yeah, I mean,
it's still growing. I feel like finally now we're kind of comfortable in what we are and talking to each other, and I mean with Shay, Cheech, and myself on the show, kind of what our voices are, where we talk, what everyone's role is. We're all very comfortable with that, and maybe it's the same that we were doing, months ago.
Right.
But I think everybody's very comfortable with what they do now.
Yeah, and I think too, and I can't speak to this because I do a solo show, but I think when all those puzzle pieces are in congruence and they're all working well together, it comes across. There's I guess again that word. There's a fluidity to it that sounds natural. Like when I was there, I recognized right away that you guys had it together, and this was a while. This is what, about a year ago, or like this was 9 months ago.
Yeah,
8
it was probably
months ago?
February, or I think it was. Yeah,
it's like 8 months ago, whenever it was. But you had, it was structured in a way where it made sense. Yes, I'll use the word professional, but it was more than that. It was really, it was inviting sitting there. I didn't feel awkward. I didn't feel like there was, it didn't feel like it was being done on a shoestring budget. It didn't feel like it was, I don't know. There was a level of confidence that went with the production, and I, as a guest, appreciated that.
Oh, wow. I'm very flattered to hear that, especially from you doing, I feel like your show is one of the best, if not the best, in the area. So it's definitely flattering to hear that, especially from just the production point, too, because it's nice hearing that as a show. But like I was saying before, just to hear that part, it's for all the stress you get, hearing one good thing every now and then, boost your morale.
Well, it's truth. And I think, too, what I would like to have happen is that people could look at the show. I'll call you right back.
Okay, yeah.
Saw his name escapes me right now. Great guy, and he's really developed a great podcast there. I think he's only doing audio though, but really exceptionally well done. Mm-hmm. And your show and a couple others in town, I would hope to think that those shows become benchmarks that other people that want to start this can have other shows to look to and say, hey, here's a great example of how it's being done. Let me model some of what I'm going to do after that. Because we kind of didn't have that.
Yeah.
Like locally.
Right. I like when I see something or when I have somebody on because I like, communicate. I learn from other people. They learn from me. If I see somebody that has a podcast that I hear, oh, I kind of did something like that. I don't take it like, oh, no. It's like, okay, they learned that.
Right.
I'm glad they came on. And they discussed it with me. It's not like, oh, I'm going to go do,
right.
the Poor Woman's podcast. They like, twisted.
Right.
But it's cool to see, okay, oh, they were doing this. They saw that we had our desk and our camera like this. They tweaked it because we had this conversation.
Of course.
So I take it as like, oh, they respected what I had to say
100%.
enough to follow through with it.
100%. Yeah, and I think that the more shows that stick around and refine their process will help those that come after have kind of a template. Mm-hmm. My template was something I saw on YouTube from Rogan, right? But I didn't really look around Pittsburgh and see anything that made me say, hey, I think I should try this or that. I literally kind of started from scratch locally. Mm-hmm. That makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think we talked about this the last time I was on. I always listen to Adam Carolla. I've listened to him a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the way he does his show, he's the host. He kind of talks about what he wants. There's a news girl on there, so I really wanted Shay because I like having the female voice on there. Mm-hmm. And Shay does a great job. She has great chemistry. She's really funny. She's very personal. She's great with, because I'll lose my track of mind a lot. I take notes, and I'll keep a pen on me because, like I said, when we're jumping around, I'll say one thing and forget where I went.
You're doing live editing, man. I still don't know how you do it.
Well, like I was saying earlier, you really have to kind of guess how the show's going to go, and we have, the same kind of benchmark. So if we hit them, we hit them. But it's kind of like swinging with a bat with a donut on it. So now when I'm just doing audio, if I'm not doing it, I'm used to, doing things and fixing the sound. And if the camera cuts out, point to her, and then I go over and fix the camera or something.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of stress like that. But, hopefully you learn every week, and hopefully other people, it's cool to see.
People love to watch, though. That was the thing for me. I never wanted to do an audio-only show. I just didn't. And I was one who was consuming audio-only versions of Rogan initially and some other ones. And then once I saw that, wow, that's a filmed, like, unvarnished talk show with no commercials and no breaks, and it just goes until they're done talking to each other.
Yeah.
That was just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, why didn't this happen like decades ago?
Well, that's what's great. Like for the distance running, or like you're saying with driving, if you're going to take a long drive, I mean, there's nothing against music or whatever. If you listen to one of these conversations, like if you haven't before, I mean, obviously you probably, if you're listening to a podcast now, but it takes you down this whole hole, and you get to learn people, and it feels like you're part of a conversation, even though you've never. It feels
like you're sitting right there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like books on tape too. There's a time and place for everything, but I'm more inclined to listen to two people that I have a decent level of respect for have a conversation and see if that subject is interesting. Now, if it doesn't, I go do something else.
Yeah.
But if I find the interest in the and it could just be a free ranging comedic podcast. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be intellectual or highbrow on a subject. It could just be four friends just having a conversation. And what this show has shown me through the Four Friends series, because they're all kind of rotating in and out and new people coming and going, that Four Friends series showed me that it goes beyond discussing one particular topic. It goes beyond looking at credentials. There's something magical happens when you get four people in tune with each other, having a relaxed conversation, and then the cameras and the mic are just kind of eavesdropping in on it and presenting it to others. People dig that. And I just, in the beginning, Chris, I would never thought that people would buy into that.
Yeah.
But when I see the playthrough numbers, I'm just like, people are buying in. And it could be a conversation where we have 7 different topics and it's just talking about life and nothing intently for that show. It was, kind of a free for all. So it goes to show me that humans do want to, or they're either do want to participate or are fascinated by traditional physical conversations.
I think we might have touched on this when we were doing the 4 things with 4 friends with Corey and Danny. That I at least feel like people kind of want to be part of a group, even if they're not physically. When you're listening to that, you feel included, like you're part of something.
No, if it's done right, and I think that's why, to your point earlier, the production needs to be right. Because if you do the production right, you create that atmosphere. Like you create an atmosphere that is better than the idea of the old talk show where you look and there be, just a front view. You can create something more intimate. And I think that lends to the viewer or listener feeling like they're there.
Yeah. I think with the long form too, because we're almost so used to watching TV or listening to radio where you get 5 minutes or 7 minutes or 10 minutes. You're not getting an hour and 20 minutes where you can have a thought out conversation where you're going back and forth with different ideas, where everyone has their opinion, you're bouncing them off, and then maybe you change your opinion. But it's hard to do that in 7 minutes. Take a break, come back, try to remember where you were. The first 30 seconds, you're just recapping the last 30 seconds of before you went out. Now there's a fourth of it gone. Now you got to hit that again, and now it's a commercial again.
You think you ever maybe do yourself a long form podcast since you like it so much? Did you ever set out to maybe do that?
I was thinking about it a lot recently, just because since I've moved, I set up a office kind of down in the basement, and I'd have to think about it, and I wouldn't want to just do it. I want to think about it, think of how I want to do it, and but I've definitely thought about that because I like podcasting. I like talking to people. I like to keep doing it, and I think that the more I do, like the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hour thing, the more you do it, the better you're gonna get.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Podcasting is like anything else. It's a muscle, man, and you grow that muscle, you can get really good at it. And I was so arrogant when I came into this, man. I thought, it's a piece of cake. But now I can go back and look at those first couple of shows, and I don't cringe when I watch them, but I go, wow, look at how far, in a very natural way, my performance on the show is compared to the beginning. You gain podcasting muscle. You know? It's hard to explain that to somebody new that they look at it like 300 shows and they're like, oh my God, I'll never get there. You will get there if you like it.
Right. 300 shows isn't nothing. That's some time that you have to really put in and love it and keep doing it. Yeah,
but I do think that there's great things that come from consistency, especially long-term consistency. I think you will be, quote unquote, you will obtain levels of success almost in spite of your ineptitude if you're willing to go long.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing. I'm like, okay, maybe I don't have the traditional background in things, but if I keep doing it, if I keep listening and keep putting something out there, I'm going to learn, I'm going to get better, and the whole product will.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the history of American business. You know, people start things and ventures, and oftentimes they don't know what the hell they're doing. But fortunes have been made through repetition.
Yeah.
And I think that more than anything else. I mean, you like to think you learn as you go, and I'm sure by osmosis, even if you're trying to be lazy and not learn, you do it enough times, you're going to learn by osmosis.
Well, that's kind of what you were saying with you looking back at an early show and cringing. I would go back and think, okay, yeah, that's awful. What am I doing? But maybe I should just be looking at, look how far I've come. Look at what I have done.
Bingo.
You were there, and now you're, I mean, not that I'm this polished thing, but I haven't regressed. I've definitely taken steps forward.
Oh, yeah.
So hopefully in another year and a half, I can look back with the same kind of, not necessarily cringe, but hopefully I have that same growth.
Did 100%, man. Did you have a good time?
I did. Thank you so much.
We're definitely going to do this again.
Yeah, absolutely, Eric. It's always so fun to come on. And like I said, talking to somebody else who does a podcast, I feel like I connect better with them. And it's always very inviting. So
it's always great to talk to another podcaster because they're already conversationalists. I mean, they get it. And I think it's an easier conversation for us when we talk to each other. But I find it very enlightening, too, because we're all kind of going through the same stuff. You know?
Yeah.
I think we are.
I think so too.
All right, buddy. We'll do it again, and they can reach you in all the different ways they can reach.
Okay, so
Poorman's podcast.
let me think. The main one that I'm going to use probably is on Instagram, but luckily all the Instagram stuff posts to Facebook, so that works out. You can find us, I think, on Instagram, Poor Man's Podcast 412, because I had the original Poor Man's Podcast, and then I used a different email, and I can't get back in. So I do have the name Poor Man's Podcast, but I can't get into it from my own, lack of awareness. But Poor Man's Podcast 412. You can follow us on Twitter. Not that I don't think I've ever posted anything, but it exists. Or Facebook, just search Poor Man's Podcast.
You're too young for Facebook, man.
Well, you know what? I have different demographics, so I know where I'm going on each one.
I'm kidding you. All right, buddy. We'll do this again.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
All right, guys, gals, we're out.